Yeah, let's give it another try, I guess.
Yeah, I think I guess yesterday didn't really work.
The advancements of technology didn't pan out for us,
It
I
never does with
suppose.
me. That's funny.
Oh, is this live? I'm looking on YouTube. It says
Yeah.
waiting. Oh, it probably, yeah, it has to like process. Yeah, okay. I get it.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
So I think we're going to be able to do this the right way this
Well,
time.
let's hope so.
Yeah.
At least we'll be able to maybe hear some of my voice this time. My voice is a little bit more louder than yours.
Yeah.
So,
Right?
although we couldn't hear my voice yesterday,
No, I was talking and I sounded ridiculous
it was pretty cute to hear
talking
you
to myself.
having a conversation with no one
No,
and
yeah.
taking pauses to let someone answer questions, but it was pretty cute, I thought.
Yeah, it's whatever. So let's do this chat.
Okay. So you had said you wanted me to kind of like, or there was requests to talk about our story and then our
Yeah.
individual stories. I can start with mine if that's
Oh,
okay.
yeah, most definitely. I'd love to hear your story.
Okay. So for anyone listening, my name's Brandon. I'm a person in recovery. I've been a person in recovery for over 10 years. I started going to meetings when I was 19, and I'm 34. I just turned 34 last week. So I've been around recovery for a very long time. But how a person gets in recovery is usually from pretty tough experiences with drugs and alcohol. So my drug and alcohol story is that um, I was very fascinated by alcohol. My parents would drink on the weekends and entertain guests, and I just remember like once my dad would have like a few drinks, he would get loose. He would laugh more and cuss more, and he would pass out money. We would be out to eat somewhere, and maybe they had an arcade or anything to kind of get the kids to shut up and go away. He would kind of like hand me like a $20 bill or a $50 bill or whatever. So I think my thought, 8, 9, 10 years old, was that alcohol was really cool. Um, and then I definitely, and a couple times, saw my dad get too drunk. I remember one time I came home, I was out riding bikes with friends, and it was getting dark out, summertime. So I went home, and as soon as I got up in our driveway, my mom was like, "Don't go in the backyard. Your dad's sick." Of course, as soon as she turned her back, I went in the backyard, and my dad was rolling around in the grass, laughing to himself. And I don't know why, but that looked really fun to me for some reason. His buddies were laughing at him. So, long story short, when I was 11 years old, my parents, I was grounded. I remember it was summertime. I don't remember what I was grounded for, but I wasn't allowed to do anything with my friends. I had to do all these chores around the house. And my parents were taking my sister shopping out of town for like summer clothes and going back to school clothes, stuff like that. And they told me that I had to cut the grass before they got home or I was going to be in a lot of trouble. So they leave. I go downstairs. My dad had a big full bar in our basement. And I'd had sips of alcohol here and there, but I'd never been drunk. And for whatever reason, I decided to drink 2 or 3 shots of Old Granddad, and I drank 2 or 3 beers. They were Miller Genuine Draft. I'll never forget it. And I just remember this warmth in my stomach that just spread out throughout my entire body. And I remember that feeling. And that was the most fun I've ever had cutting grass in my entire life. Never had I done a chore at home or for my parents where it was this much fun. And of course, the interesting part is, I cut the grass. I think I ate some food and then I went to bed really early because I started feeling pretty weird. And I didn't get caught. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get kicked out. I didn't go to jail. all those things were going to eventually happen in my life. But on that day at 11 years old, no one got mad at me. Nothing bad happened. So it was kind of like, okay, I got away with this and I had a lot of fun. And I started experimenting with alcohol. And alcohol was cool, but my parents drank. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know. I started getting fascinated with other chemicals. So I started smoking marijuana around 12, pills around 13, 14, cocaine shortly thereafter, acid, mushrooms, you name it. I got really big into prescription medication in high school. I was in high school from 2000 to 2004. And like a lot of people, I started out, taking like one Vicodin or one Xanax. And I really liked Xanax. I liked what it did to me. I liked how it made me feel. But with the Vicodin, I didn't get it. I didn't really feel any different. And a buddy of mine, when I was about 15 or 16, told me to take 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
He dared me. So I had to do it. We were at school and I fell in love. And long story short, by the time I was a senior in high school in 2004, I started snorting heroin. And heroin was really the drug that kind of brought me to my knees, so to speak. It made me a person that I definitely wasn't a good person. I lied. I stole. I stole from stores, stole from family, stole from friends, um, and got away with a lot. I started going to jail here and there, but nothing major. But I also started going to inpatient rehab shortly out of high school. And the shortened version is I've been to rehab 5 times, I've been to jail 4 times, and I've been to prison once. Um, and not exactly in that order. I spent my 21st birthday in rehab. My 22nd birthday, I spent homeless under a bridge in Eastside Dayton. I spent my 23rd birthday in the county jail. And my 24th birthday, I spent in prison.
And this is a kid that lived on a golf course.
Yeah.
In Miamisburg, Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important that I tell people that, I come from a good home and a good family, or at least I believe that for sure.
No, you did.
I did, a lot of times
You
when
do.
I would, yeah, right. You got it. A lot of times when I would, go to rehab or go to an outpatient and I would hear people talk about their childhoods, it made me really uncomfortable because I felt like I didn't have an excuse to do the drugs I was doing or to drink the way I drank or to take the pills I took, whatever. And it took me a lot of years to kind of just be able to say, yeah, none of that stuff matters. Where I grew up, how much money my dad made, what cars they drove, none of it. I definitely wasn't treated badly as a kid. It wasn't leaving to Beaver or anything, but ultimately I had a really good childhood and was brought up with some pretty good morals and values and those kind of things. Obviously, doing drugs and living in the streets, a lot of that goes out the window when the only thing that matters is that drug. In 2009, everything kind of came to a head for me, and I ended up turning myself into the probation department. And I had a couple years left on a prison sentence, but I had turned myself in. I was really honest with them. And by the time I went to court and did all that, I only had 70 days left in prison. And I've been sober ever since. Now, I didn't know I was getting sober. I didn't know that, I didn't really even realize I was being honest with probation and judges and lawyers. I was just talking about how I felt.
You was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Oh, yeah. I was tired of living in the streets. I was tired of going to rehab. I was tired of lying to people and playing these games to get money or a place to stay or get a ride somewhere. And it was just,
Boring.
really, yeah, it was the same thing every day. It was just not fun. The kid that takes the drink at 11 and is cutting the grass and laughing and falling down. And even the kid in high school that was experimenting with different drugs and drinking and getting high. And, that was a lot of fun. But it was kind of like right out of high school, I started having some major problems and I started just unable to stop. Like where some people could be like, okay, I got to go to work tomorrow or I got to go to school, college tomorrow. I couldn't do any of that. All I could do was drink and use drugs. I had no ability to sort of stop on my own. There always had to be an intervention of some sort. And sometimes that intervention was jail. Sometimes that intervention was a rehab. Sometimes, most of the times it was both. I would go to jail and then they would send me to rehab. But, ultimately, I got to a place where I didn't have any friends. My family didn't really know what to do with me. If I walked in a room and my mom was sitting there, she'd just burst into tears because everyone told my mom, you need to brace yourself. It's not looking good. And that was the truth. I was on a path of most people don't survive. So, I didn't have anything in 2009 when I walked out of the penitentiary. I was very afraid of getting out of prison. As crazy as that sounds, I was much more afraid out here than I was in there because I had learned to live in institutions. I had learned to adapt to my situation. But to be out here in the real world where I had to hold a job and have relationships and go to meetings, it just seemed really overwhelming. And at first it was very overwhelming. I was very, very nervous. That first year, I don't think is much fun for anyone. It's pretty strange. I mean, a lot of good happened. I had a lot of laughs, but I felt crazy and I felt nervous a lot of the times. But basically what happened was some guys from a 12-step fellowship, one of them being my cousin, had come to sort of 12-step me and kind of say, hey, we used to drink, we used to go to jail. We don't do that anymore. Do you want to come with us? And those guys really saved my life. It was pretty incredible. And I just started doing all the stuff they were doing. So if they were talking about getting a sponsor, I got a sponsor. If they were on step 3, I wanted to be on step 3 too. So I would get with my sponsor and try to get step work done. And my life changed. Literally. I mean, I'm a different person from that day to this day. Now, recovery is obviously a lifelong thing. It's not just something where, I did the steps one time and went to a few meetings. I have to continue to do those things on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to maintain recovery, to maintain sobriety. And it's not for everybody. And I know plenty of people who got sober and got clean different ways. That's just kind of how I went about it, or the way I was shown anyway.
A lot of people turn to God and religion
to
get clean.
And I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the 12-step thing. Not necessarily, they won't talk about religion. They really keep it just at spirituality. But that's the idea, the basic principles of a 12-step fellowship are, I'm not doing a very good job of running my life. Maybe someone else can. And to the point to where, if I turned my will and life over to just those guys I was running with when I was newly sober and just did whatever they told me, my life wouldn't be handled by a crazy person who just got out of prison. My life would be in the hands of people who were living recovery.
Right.
So even that, as simple as that is, was a power greater than myself. But finding an actual God and finding an actual spiritual program was key for me. I know plenty of guys that still struggle spiritually in terms of what they actually believe, but that's kind of the whole point of the 12-step thing. But I know a lot of people got sober through church. I know people got sober through therapy. I know people who, had a kid or got married or whatever, something worked for them.
Do you think addiction is genetic?
With genetics, I won't argue with anyone if it is or it isn't. My deal is that, so on my dad's side of the family, everyone died from addiction. Everyone. My grandmother, all my dad's sisters. My dad passed away last year to a stroke. And he was eight years sober, I think.
Yeah.
So he was one of the first, in that bloodline to die sober in a very, very long time, as far as we can figure. Now, on my mom's side, just the men seem to have issues. The women, not so much. And some of them are sober. Some are sober through a 12-step fellowship. Some are sober through church. Some are sober through other means. But the deal is that genetically, was there something in me that maybe I was more predetermined to be sucked into an addiction or be um, physically. Uh, it's like it's easier for me to become dependent on something. I remember when I was a kid, people used to call it an addictive personality. I used to
Hmm.
hear that a lot from people in like the 90s and the early 2000s. And yeah, that was me. I was always getting addicted to something. Even as a kid, whether it was candy bars or video games or music or maybe I had a girlfriend or whatever. But so yeah, I think I think there's a large genetic component. Some people will say that that's not the case, and it's just my experience that you have these families where drugs and alcohol are such a part of the culture of that family, that a lot of times some of the kids, not all, but some of the kids end up dibbing and dabbling in drugs. Sometimes they become dependent, sometimes they don't. um,
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to that, but with me and my experience, like with my mother, she was an addict. She took her own life. I was 4 years old, and then, I grew up becoming an addict. But I have sisters who's never touched any type of drugs. I have four sisters, biological half sisters,
right.
that have never used drugs, and I'm the biggest outcast of the family because I was an addict. And I'm still an addict. I'm just in recovery. But it's I don't know. It's hard to figure out.
Yeah, I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I I mean, I've read a lot of stuff on the genetic component. A lot of the docs that are in addiction believe it exists, um, but I've also met people who came from families where they didn't have, addicts or alcoholics on either side that ended up, they drank and they used enough to become dependent, became an addict themselves. So, that's a tough one. I like I said, I definitely believe there's a genetic component, but it's also important that I say that, you know, I'm not an addict or alcoholic because my dad was or because
Right.
my grandma was. I'm an addict and alcoholic just like the person I just described. I did enough drugs and drank enough alcohol to become dependent on those things. And really, and this is perfect to what addiction is. The way you really find out with someone is how do they act and react to life once their drug of choice is taken from them.
Hmm.
A lot of times we look at addiction and we look at all the drama, all the stuff that someone's doing while they're getting high. What are they like when they don't have their drug? If they're, in my case, I was stealing from stores and doing a lot of just illegal behavior. It's obvious that I have a problem.
People's moods change.
Oh, big time,
Oh gosh.
big time.
Like, I was a completely different person. Like, you wouldn't have known me. I mean, you wouldn't even associated with me if you'd have known me back then. You wouldn't have wanted to have anything to do with me. Honest to God, you wouldn't have. And vice versa, I think.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I think that, and you and even me, we have what's called a complete personality change.
Right.
Once the chemicals are in our system and when we're in withdrawal and they're leaving our system, so we need more, we become people that, yeah, I wouldn't even like. If I met someone like that today, like I was, I definitely wouldn't want to hang out with them.
Right.
I might try to help them get sober, but um, it's just one of those things. Um,
People ask me all the time, well, what can I do to help my loved one or my friend? You've got to help them change their friends. You have to help them change the places they go. You have to help them change basically everything. They can't continue being friends with the same people they hang around that use drugs. They can't continue going to the same places. they got to change people, places, and things. They just can't continue the same lifestyle, or they're never going to get out of that funk and never get out of that, using those drugs. It's never going to change until they change.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said they have to change everything, and that's
Lord,
hard.
I did.
I did too.
Gosh.
I was kind of blessed. I didn't really have any friends left. My family wouldn't really talk to me. I was blessed to get sober at 23. So like I had never lost a business or a family. I'd lost a lot of friendships over the years. A lot of people that I either grew up with or met along the way.
My family wrote me out of the trust.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where everybody's story is a little different in terms of what they had on the line once they got sober. What was the catalyst, or what was the reasoning behind why get sober now?
You can't love your family to death.
Yeah.
You have to be very stern, and no matter what it takes. I mean, even though it's going to hurt their feelings, in the long run, at least they'll be alive.
Yeah.
And that's what it took for me, literally. I mean, they had to shut doors in my face. They, I wouldn't have remembered anyways because I was so zannied out. I didn't even know my name.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best thing my mom ever did for me in those years was I had went to stay with her for a little bit because I had nowhere to go, and I went to her house one day, and I only had like one trash bag of stuff, and it was all in a trash bag out front. She locked the door.
Close the blinds.
Yeah, she closed the blinds and said, "If you come back, I'll call the police." And really, that helped me down. You know what I mean? It helped me hit bottom quicker. I don't know if she intended that. I think I had a younger sister that she was trying to protect, and she knew I was stealing from them. So I don't know.
And it's not that drug addicts are these bad people. It's the drugs that make them do bad things. Because I always hear how people have said, "Oh, stay away from drug addicts. They're these awful people," and that's not the truth. Drugs make people do really bad things. I don't know. I just think there's such bad
Stigma
on. Yeah.
No, I agree. And it's what's interesting is the people I run with in recovery and guys I've sponsored, and every walk of life, every skin color, every religion, every career. I've seen rock stars in meetings. I sponsored a politician, but I've also sponsored guys who got sober living under a bridge.
And some of those people own houses now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nicer houses than we have.
And
nicer cars, and to know that we help those people, some of those people, is an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing when you watch their lives and see where they came from to where they are now. It's like, if you want to witness a miracle firsthand, I can.
Right, there's one.
Yeah, I can definitely show you some people. I mean, I'm definitely one myself. My wife as well. We are a miracle, but I can definitely show you some people that came from nothing, had nothing, and have worked so hard to get where they are today. It's pretty impressive. I think like the big thing with addiction that a lot of people don't see or understand is that a lot of times when we think addiction, we think about some guy under a bridge with a trench coat on, drinking out of a brown paper bag. And sure, he might be alcoholic, he might not be. I don't know. But what's interesting is the same disease that could kill him is the same disease that could kill the millionaire doctor's wife who's drinking in her closet and doesn't want anyone to know, or taking too many pills, whatever. Same disease. They look very different.
But they're the same.
The same. They're both fatal. They're both progressive. This is a disease that does not discriminate and is out to kill, ruin families, and destroy lives. And it does so on a daily basis.
Oh,
Daily
gosh.
basis. I know we've lost a lot of people in the past few years.
Oh gosh, we lost.
So many.
Yeah, one that meant a lot to us, especially you.
Yeah.
He was a good one.
Yeah. He was one of the last guys that I got high with. One of the last guys that I ran with.
Oh, he tried so hard though.
Yeah.
At the end, he tried so hard.
And just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Just could not stay clean to save his life, literally. And
He was gonna have Thanksgiving dinner at our house.
With his mom.
Yeah.
Have his mom over because he wasn't able to go there legally, I think. And just one of those things where this was a guy that knew more about recovery than most 2 or 3 people clean put together, but could not stay clean to save his life. And that's, once again, that's addiction. You can have all the knowledge about it in the world. You can know all the lingo. You can read the books. You can go to the meetings. If you can't stop drinking or using drugs, you've got a bigger problem.
And that's why it's a disease. And, people that argue and say it's not a disease, obviously they've never been around it or they've never suffered with it.
Right.
And that bothers me so bad. I couldn't tell you how many people I've argued with about the addiction or the disease of addiction. Good Lord.
Well, and I think there's a lot of people that don't want to believe it's a disease. They think it has more to do with choices.
Oh, it's definitely not a choice. I mean, gosh, my mom would still be here if it was a choice. She wouldn't have died.
Oh, I mean, you can walk up to anyone on the street right now who's an active heroin addict, active alcoholic, and ask them if they want to live this way.
Yeah.
Ask them, is this what you want to do with your life? And no, none of them. No one out there right now is pumped and excited to go continue their day to just try to get one more.
Yeah.
One more fix.
Because they don't even get high. I mean, they're doing it just to maintain, just so they can make it through another day. It's not about getting high anymore. It's sad. I mean, it's so unbelievably sad. And then what do we read in the paper that
all those statistics and all that?
The statistics are going back up.
Yeah, last year, or the end of last year, the end of 2018, they were saying all the numbers were better. They were seeing big improvements, and we weren't seeing that like in our own recovery community amongst our friends. And I actually spoke to some guys from that work for that county about it, and they were
You
concerned
had a meeting
as well.
with them, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a buddy who's in politics, and I took him down there to speak with them some about the county and what's being done, especially with the opioid epidemic. We live like one town over from Dayton, Ohio, which is like the heroin overdose capital of the world. It's pretty much always in the top 5. It's been number 1 a bunch of times, but these guys kind of said, yeah, we don't know if those numbers are accurate. That's what they're saying. And now, just this week, they've started to say the numbers are way back up. 17 people died in 14 days.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. And they anticipate it getting worse. They have drugs now that are in the heroin that they cannot be woken up or revived with Narcan.
Yeah, the Narcan takes no effect. It's that, is it chlorophyll or chlorofentanyl or
carfentanil or something like that? Yeah, I think that's what it is.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to put that kind of a drug into heroin or whatever? Who's going to do that? Why? Don't you want them returning?
You would think, right? I mean,
it's not funny, but God.
No, the logic is, that I think their thought is a stronger product. They want to give their addicts a stronger, better product. And unfortunately, a lot of people are not surviving.
And the insanity with addiction is when these addicts hear that somebody dies, they'll call that dealer up and say, I want that.
Because that's the best stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
because that's the strongest.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Knowing that someone died is better for their business.
Wow.
Yeah. It's insanity. So yeah, I mean, we live in an area that there's a lot of addiction, a lot of deaths, but there is a strong recovery community. There's a lot of people out there staying clean, like I said, in different ways, but the 12-step communities are strong. One of the biggest recovery churches in the world is just north of Dayton. There's another big one town over from us, the other direction. But yeah, I mean, it's a moment in time where you've got all these people dying, and they're young. Typically, they're 18 to 25. A lot of kids from the suburbs.
I think that number's raised, and it's like 25 to 35-year-old women.
Yeah. I mean, it flip flops all the time. Sometimes the demographic will be female, sometimes it'll be male, sometimes it'll be younger, older. It flip flops all the time. And once again, it just goes to show that it doesn't discriminate.
No.
This is something that's way bigger than, anything that Ohio's obviously able to handle. But from what we've heard, they are adding a lot of treatment center beds, giving a lot more people an opportunity to at least get clean if they wanted to. There's a statistic that I would love to see. As sad as it is, I would be interested to know how many people die every year on a waiting list trying to get into treatment.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
they need to build more treatment centers.
Yeah. I mean, that's
instead of giving all that money to the sheriff's office,
right?
Plumber.
Yeah.
They need to give the money. They need to build more.
They would.
Yeah, you'd think.
But that one of the last big lump sums of money they got all went to the sheriff's department, and he hired a counselor and more cops.
Because that's what they need.
And maybe they're in the same boat. They don't know what to do. But I think my thing is we have evidence that having beds for people that are trying to get clean is key. Get them off the streets, get them in to see a doctor. Let's at least give them a weekend.
I keep seeing all these people put in jail for possession. Instead of putting them in jail, they need to put them in treatment.
Right.
They need treatment. What good is putting them in jail going to do?
I don't know. Nothing for most people. The jails aren't turning out winners.
It's going to give the city more money.
Yeah, well, of course.
That's it.
Oh yeah, no. At that level, it's big business. It's about making money. I get that. I just wish anyone would step in and say, "Hey, hold on. Let's look at adding some beds here. Let's look at getting, some of these guys out of jail and let's get them into a treatment center." The options are there. The space is there. It's just a matter of them doing it. And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But that's, this is who we are. We're people that these are the conversations we have. These are the things that are news to us that we're trying to understand and be helpful with and being involved with.
Brandon and I like to talk a lot about recovery and addiction because he and that's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually my drug counselor.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah, that's how we met. I fell in love with Sara in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And we've just been really blessed and lucky that, things have worked and it was a pretty amazing experience. But, I think ultimately, and I don't know how many people are listening to this or going to listen to this.
I can't see the chat. I don't know what I've done, but I can't see the chat.
I don't even know if they can hear us. Probably like last night or yesterday, whatever. But
we'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll just do it again. Really, all I'm ever trying to say, I mean, I can talk about this all y'all want. Like if people want to hear this kind of stuff, I can talk about it. I've done it for a living on and off for years and years. I quit talking about it for a time period because I just got too burnt out on just every day. Just that's all I ever talk about.
I can tell you what, you're the best counselor I ever knew.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, I got like burnt and just to where I didn't want to go to meetings. I didn't want to talk about recovery. It just got really boring to me. And I had to take breaks from just talking about it all the time. But, I'm in a place again where I'm talking about it a lot. Because it's important to me. It saved my life. A lot of a lot of the guys I grew up with and a lot of the people I got high with, or well, actually, basically everyone that I did hard drugs with. So like everybody I shot up dope with and ran around with are all dead.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that's left, as far as I know. And I've kept pretty good track of people. I didn't share much, so I didn't have a whole lot of friends to run with, but I knew a few people, and a lot of the people I was in rehab with, and they're all gone. There's just very few of us that are clean, and sober and alive, and it's unfortunate. I got a lot of friends in the graveyard. I got a lot of friends in the penitentiary. I got buddies that are never coming home. They will be there the rest of their natural lives, and I get to be out here. I get to have a family. I get to have puppies and music and love and go to meetings and I get to make coffee every morning and Sarah makes me dinner and I have this great life
And a
you know
great stepson.
and a wonderful stepson who's extremely smart and talented and artistic, and I have all these amazing things. And I had a lot of survivor's guilt for a lot of years. I didn't know what that was, but I just knew that I felt like maybe I didn't deserve this, or I didn't belong, or something was wrong. Why, you know, and why did God? You turn on the news and a baby has passed away or died, and it's like I'm here smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, being a jerk. At least that's how it works in my mind.
You're here because you have a gift. You have a natural gift of being able to talk about recovery, and you do very good at it.
Well, thank you.
No, I'm being
No,
serious.
yeah, and that's kind of where
Many people have told you that too.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the purpose I found. That was the purpose that ended up, when I started really looking for why am I here, like why did I get to do this? That was the answer that kept coming up over
Because
and over
you
and
can
over again.
stand up in front of 300 to 500 people at a time, and you can, share your story, and you can have the whole crowd crying. I've been there and seen it.
Yeah, I could tell plenty of sad stories. I can do that anytime. I've eaten out of dumpsters in Dayton, Ohio, but I mean, the truth is, like, I don't know. I think that recovery's in an interesting place. I think there's some pivotal stuff going on. It's the community at large is more aware of it. The news is more aware of it. Just the general public. And
I think a lot of lives could be saved if more people would just try it. I mean, I sit here and I think, wow, if only recovery was, like AA and NA was popular back when my mom died.
Right.
If it was just popular back then, maybe she'd still be here.
No, absolutely.
And for other people who've lost their moms and dads or loved ones, maybe they would still be here. And that upsets me so much because, I know what I've had to deal with because of the loss of my mom. And so, I try to talk to people and I'm like, look, there is hope. If you would only give it a try, there is hope. And, that's why I'm so adamant that if people are out there struggling, there is help. And, there's people that care immensely, especially me. I mean, I'll be the first one, I'll be the first one there to talk to you because, Lord, I don't want anybody else to die from this disease. It's such an awful disease. Too many people die from this disease.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't see any signs of that stopping anytime soon.
No.
I do believe it's going to get worse, and I think
the drugs are getting stronger,
and they're going to continue to get stronger. It's basic supply and demand. The demand is so high that drugs aren't going anywhere. But if I'd like to see my family and friends continue to be on this planet and maybe find some happiness or some peace, then I need to be available and I need to do what's necessary in my recovery.
Yeah.
And today I have, it's definitely a one day at a time thing. It's hard to grasp that concept at times, but today it's easy.
How long have you got today?
Oh, over 10 years. I had 10 years in January. So,
Whoop, whoop. I
yeah.
had 5 years in January.
Yeah.
Whoop,
Yeah.
whoop.
So it's one of those things where who would have thought 10 years, 5 years, 30 days is a miracle.
Yeah.
One day is a miracle, so anything beyond that's beyond a miracle. And that's what my life is. And I guess that probably is why it's a little easier to smile most days. It's a little easier to be kind most days because I know that, I'm truly living, this miracle. So that's about all I've got.
Yeah.
To those out there, like I said, that, want to continue this conversation, want to hear more, please ask questions. I could do this anytime necessary. Obviously, Sarah wants me to do it all the time.
I do. I like coming on live. I like talking.
Yeah,
If I could just
yeah, it's
figure
fun.
out the chat. I don't know what I did wrong again.
Well, we'll figure it out next
We
time.
probably didn't even go live.
No, it's probably just me and you talking to each other. It's okay.
That's all right.
The
That's what we
dogs
do.
enjoyed it. They've been quiet this whole time, so they seem to really like it.
They're chilling.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate anyone that may or may not be listening. But I'm without a doubt the luckiest guy I've ever met, the most blessed guy I've ever met. To come from where I came from and have the luck. Guys like me don't get to have the life I'm having. So I'm married to the most beautiful girl I've ever met, or heard about, or read about, or ever seen.
You're funny.
And it's truly a miracle that I'm clean and sober today.
It's a miracle I'm clean and sober today.
And to all of you that have questions about this, want to learn more, just saying, hey, please do. And hopefully I'll catch you again some other time. But thank you, Sarah, for having me on your live feed. And God bless everybody, and we love you.
You guys have a great night, and hopefully you are able to hear us. And thank you. And hopefully we can do this again. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I really hope that worked.
I do too.
I really do.